It's absolutely pouring down here today, so I'm just sheltering for a minute under this bridge. It's an old, it's an old railway line that's running above me here. It's the old salt line, which I think I've spoken about before, but now it's just a path. Anyway, I'm sheltering under here because it's so wet, but I've been thinking about this item that's been in the news recently, about the proposed post of a president of Europe that features in the Lisbon Treaty. And our ex-Prime Minister Tony Blair was in the running for that for a while. I think it's been pretty much established that he's not really in the running anymore, which is good as far as I'm concerned. But this whole idea that there'd be a president of Europe and the language that's circulating around that seems so odd to me. Someone was on the radio the other day, I think it was Peter Mandelson, talking about how whoever this person was, it needed to be someone who could stop traffic. I don't think it meant it needed to be a traffic policeman. It needed to be someone who was so charismatic and so had such a dominating presence, such a sense of leadership, that the whole of Europe could kind of rally around this person, like one of the old kings and queens of old. Very odd idea, really, and kind of a presidential role in the American sense of presidential, rather than a kind of chairman role or a facilitator or a coordinator role. There's something so anachronistic for me about that. And particularly this quote from, I think it was Mandelson at least, that role requires this sense of charisma about it, this sense of stopping traffic. I think there's a couple of things. I think partly, there's two things really. Partly the whole idea that one person, one man usually, could be put into that position and have a useful function there is just absurd to me. I mean, it made sense a few thousand years ago when we were basically just tribes and gangs and extended families. And it probably makes sense in some parts of the world now that still work in sense of tribes and extended families. If you were the toughest family around, then the head of the toughest family around had a lot of power. And I guess that's where the aristocracy today ultimately evolved from, that kind of position. But that's not the social structure we have now. That's not the political structure we have now. It makes no sense. I mean, what could one person possibly know about all the things that go on in a state? What value could one person bring to any kind of complex debate on all of the things that the state requires on its agenda, really? It just seems insane. And the idea that just be a figurehead, well, what's the point of that? Surely we've outgrown figureheads. That just seems mad as well. But the other thing is this thing to do with charisma. Charisma. Weber talked about charisma some time ago, and the language around charisma, a lot of the literature around charisma, is very similar to the language around leadership and training for leadership. Again, complete anachronism as far as I'm concerned. But all of that language is to do with charisma as being this almost supernatural power, this supernatural quality that a person has. And if not supernatural quality, then a kind of learned attribute. You quite often get references to spirituality in modern leadership books, which is alien as far as I'm concerned. But it is this mysticism around what leaders do, the whole idea of what a leader is, and this quality of charisma that they need to possess, or that an ideal leader should possess. And I know people who've taken these courses in leadership, and one or two people who've run courses in leadership. And a lot of it is about the kind of generation or the faking of some sense of charisma. Who knows? But charisma, I mean, the other kind of literature around charisma, which I think is much more accurate, is not to do with charisma as a quasi-supernatural power or a natural ability that a person has. It's about something that emerges from a political situation. And that's something I think is much more likely. I resonate much more strongly with that understanding of charisma. I know certainly there's been some research done in what happens to charisma when organisations change. So, for example, organisations that move from highly stratiated, hierarchical internal organisations to a much more flat management structure. When you make that kind of change to an organisation, all of the charisma that was attached to particular individuals within that organisation, the CEOs, the heads of department, it just seems to vanish overnight. All these people who apparently had these qualities, these charismatic qualities, just suddenly lose those qualities. Now, it can't be anything that's changed in the person. I mean, what's changing clearly is the change in the organisational framework, which is producing that sense, which means that that sense itself, that sense that you look at someone, you're in the presence of someone and you experience them as charismatic, that whole sense is not a product of that person, that that person is able to comport themselves in such a way that they give off these magical vibes, or is not able to say the right things at the right time necessarily, which just gives you a sense of confidence. It's not that. It's the situation that you're in is organising the power relationships, the relationships of dominance and subordination, the relationships of control, which characterise the roles that you're playing. And part of that role, part of the role of being a subordinate in that situation, is this attributing of charisma to the other person. And I guess that might come from, well, I'm speculating way beyond the data here, but I know that as human beings, we're certainly not evolved to recognise the complexities of organisations in that kind of rational way. We are evolved from creatures that have sensory relationships. So my guess is that the complexity of the organisation, which is casting these various roles of dominance and subordination and control and command, is being felt by the participants in that as charisma, and then projected onto the individual who's at the top of the organisation. That's how I'd imagine it's working. I mean, clearly there is no magic power called charisma. Obviously not. So the idea that somebody would stop traffic, the idea would look around for this magic person, Tony Blair or somebody else, who's got this fantastic voodoo, that they're able to stand up in front of the European Parliament or whatever, and make these pronouncements and kind of head up this fantastic organisation because of this secret force that they have, or this fantastic experience that they have of leadership, spiritual guidance almost. Not only is it anachronistic, not only is it political voodoo, it's also a mask for the acceptance of a kind of political situation, which I personally don't feel comfortable with, and which I think we should have outgrown centuries ago.